A grave does not become empty because the man beneath it could not afford a stone, Agnes Crowley said. Duke Alistair Ravenshaw stood at the head of the construction council table, one hand resting upon the plans for Ravenshaw Memorial Hall. Across from him, Agnes had spread 3 burial books, a hand-drawn map, and a list of 214 names over the polished wood. Architects, surveyors, and estate officers watched in silence. Beyond the windows, labourers were already clearing St. Jude's Field. Alistair glanced at the map. Its lines were uneven. Trees marked boundaries where no official survey posts remained. Small crosses indicated graves that had never possessed carved stones. "These are memories," he said, "not legal records. They are burial records. They were written by nurses and gravediggers, by the people who buried the dead." Alistair turned towards the senior surveyor. "Does the estate register recognize a cemetery on St. Jude's Field?" "No, Your Grace. The parcel is recorded as former infirmary ground, now unused." Agnes looked at him. "Unused by the living." A few men lowered their eyes. Alistair's patience thinned. "The Crown has approved the dedication. Contractors have been hired. Hundreds of men depend upon the work. And hundreds of dead depend upon us not pretending they were never there." He closed the burial book. Mrs. Crowley washed the dead. She did not survey land. Agnes did not move. "And Your Grace inherited the land. You did not bury the people beneath it." Alistair Ravenshaw had spent most of his adult life trying not to become his father. The late Duke had allowed Ravenshaw to decay behind impressive gates. Roads broke apart each winter. The infirmary survived on donations from local merchants. Miners' families lived in damp cottages, while the Duke purchased racehorses. The town possessed no public hall, no proper library, and no place large enough for civic meetings. Alistair inherited the title at 36 and made improvement the central purpose of his rule. He repaired roads. He funded a new water system. He reopened the grammar school. He brought manufacturers to the district and persuaded railway investors to consider a northern route. People who had despised his father began to speak of Alistair as a different kind of aristocrat. He valued that distinction, perhaps too much. Ravenshaw Memorial Hall was intended to prove it permanently. The building would contain a concert chamber, exhibition galleries, rooms for veterans associations, and a ballroom large enough for royal events. Its central statue would honor soldiers who had died without recognition. The eastern garden would be dedicated to the poor. The grand entrance would face the road into town, so every visitor would see the Ravenshaw crest above a building intended for public use. The chosen site was St. Jude's Field. To Alistair, it was a stretch of neglected ground covered by weeds, broken walls, and the remains of an abandoned infirmary. To Agnes Crowley, it was a cemetery. Agnes had worked at St. Jude's Infirmary from the age of 16. She had washed bedding, delivered broth, and sat with men who had no family nearby. During the fever winter of 1819, she helped record the dead because the parish clerk fell ill. When the gravedigger could no longer keep pace, Agnes marked burial locations herself. She remembered soldiers brought from temporary barracks, mine workers crushed by falling stone, servants who died without wages enough for funerals, old women from the workhouse, children whose parents had already been buried nearby. The grave markers had rarely been permanent. Some were wooden crosses. Some were stones scratched with initials. Others were trees, iron pegs, or positions measured from the infirmary wall. Over time, weather erased the markers. The Ravenshaw estate later closed the infirmary and transferred its papers into scattered archives. Agnes preserved what no one else considered important: names, dates, regiments, family contacts, objects placed inside coffins, promises that certain graves would never be disturbed without notice. Duchess Eleanor Ravenshaw examined the records before the Construction Council meeting. She found references in parish ledgers matching Agnes's entries. Military lists confirmed several names. Invoices for simple coffins corresponded with burial dates. The documents were incomplete, but they were far from imaginary. Eleanor requested a 6-month investigation. Alistair refused. The royal dedication has already been announced. Then postpone it. The Crown does not rearrange its calendar because an old field may contain unidentified remains. Eleanor looked at the burial map between them. They are not all unidentified. They are not officially identified. That distinction exists because no one has bothered to compare the records. Alistair pushed back from his desk. We cannot suspend a project serving thousands because an old nurse remembers where paupers were placed. You are not being asked to trust her memory. You are being asked to examine it. The field has no recognized graveyard status. Then perhaps the failure belongs to the estate that neglected to record it. Alistair's expression hardened. My father neglected this district. I am building something that will serve it. And you have begun by deciding which of its dead are inconvenient. At the next council meeting, Agnes requested a formal burial survey. She proposed that construction pause while each disturbed area was mapped. Recognizable remains should be reinterred separately. Families should be notified where possible. Objects carrying names or regimental marks should be catalogued immediately. Alistair asked how long it would take. At least a year if the ground is as crowded as the records suggest. The architect exhaled. Contracts had deadlines. Stone had already been ordered. The royal representative was expected before autumn. Alistair looked down the table. 1 year would destroy the project. Agnes replied. 1 year would reveal what the project is destroying. He stood. The dead do not pay rent, employ labor, or build a future. The words left the room colder than he intended. Agnes closed her hands over the burial books. No, they merely built the world you inherited. Eleanor watched her husband. Alistair heard the rebuke not as a warning but as defiance. He ordered Agnes barred from the construction site. Her burial records were to be transferred into the estate archive. Workers were forbidden from consulting her directly. The project would continue. Alistair's written instruction appeared practical. Clear the ground. Preserve any item bearing a recognized name. Do not delay construction for unidentified remains. The foreman interpreted it exactly. Where coffin plates survived, they were placed into storage. Where jewelry or military badges appeared, they were boxed for later examination. Bones without immediate identification were transferred to a communal reburial trench beyond the eastern boundary. No record was kept linking each set of remains to its original location. The purpose was speed. Some laborers objected quietly. The estate supervisor reminded them that delays threatened wages. Many lived in cottages owned by Ravenshaw. No one wished to be dismissed as superstitious or obstructive. So the work continued. The earth was leveled. Foundations were dug. Marble arrived from Italy. The first great walls rose over St. Jude's Field. Samuel Pike discovered the medal during excavation of the eastern foundation. He was 29, broad-shouldered and careful with stone. His shovel struck something metallic beneath the remains of a rotted coffin. He stopped the other men. Inside the earth lay a regimental badge, a small brass coffin plate, and a silver campaign medal darkened by soil. Samuel wiped the plate with his sleeve. The name remained legible. Sergeant Elias Ward, 4th Northumberland Regiment. A military number was engraved beneath it. Samuel carried the objects to the supervisor. "We should halt this section." The supervisor examined the plate. "The order says named items are to be preserved. And the remains? Transfer them." Separately, the supervisor looked towards the unfinished walls. "We have no time for an inquiry every time metal survives." Samuel hesitated. "A family may be looking for him. Then the office can contact them after the dedication." The medal and coffin plate were placed inside a wooden storage box. The remains were moved with others into the communal trench. Samuel secretly marked the original location on a copy of the architectural plan. He wrote the name beside it. Elias Ward. He told himself someone would ask later. No one did. Eleanor continued comparing Agnes's books with parish and military records. One night, she found the same name. Sergeant Elias Ward had returned from overseas service ill with fever. He had died at St. Jude's Infirmary 3 days after admission. His younger sister, Ruth, had written repeatedly asking where he was buried. The family had never received a definite answer. Eleanor brought the record to Alistair. This man was not unknown. Alistair read the entry. It proves he died at the infirmary, not where he was buried. Agnes marked the location. On an unofficial map, his regiment confirms his presence. The coffin account confirms the date. The construction office has found no named grave. Eleanor looked at him. "Have you asked them?" His silence answered. "Alistair, stop the eastern work. The roof supports are already in place. Then remove them. You speak as though the building can be taken apart without consequence. You speak as though the dead can." The project advanced. By summer, Ravenshaw Memorial Hall dominated the entrance to town. Its white stone facade shone above formal gardens. Tall windows filled the interior with daylight. The ballroom ceiling was painted with scenes of military sacrifice and national unity. A bronze soldier stood at the center of the main hall, his face deliberately anonymous. Below it, Alistair approved the planned inscription. "To the forgotten dead." Eleanor read the words from the scaffold. "You are calling them forgotten while refusing to read the names placed before you. A symbolic memorial includes everyone. A symbol does not honor a man whose name was available and ignored. The public needs something larger than individual records. The public is made of individuals." Alistair turned away. He had begun to fear not that Eleanor was wrong, but that Agnes might be right. That fear did not slow him. It made him more determined to finish before doubt could become public. Agnes lost her room in the estate cottage after submitting another petition. The official reason was the recovery of property needed for administrative use. No one believed it. Eleanor offered her a house owned by the Duchess's private trust. Agnes refused. "I do not want charity." "It is not charity." "It will look like it." "Then what do you want?" "I want your husband to stop treating records as rebellion." Agnes moved into a small room behind the parish church. Her original burial books remained in the Ravenshaw archive, but she had kept a copied map and several lists. She continued working with Eleanor. Samuel joined them after the storage box containing the medal was moved without being catalogued. "I reported a named soldier," he said. "They told us the names could wait." Agnes asked where he had been found. Samuel pointed to the eastern section of the ballroom. Eleanor's face changed. The central stage stood only yards away. A letter arrived from Sir Edmund Fairmont, chairman of the Royal Military Memorial Commission. He would attend the dedication as the Queen's representative. The Crown wished to use the event to honor soldiers whose burial places remained unknown. One family had been selected for special recognition. The missing soldier was Sergeant Elias Ward. Alistair read the name twice. He summoned the construction supervisor. Were any objects found bearing that name? The man hesitated. I would need to consult the stores. Consult them now. The search took most of the afternoon. No complete inventory existed. Boxes had been moved from the construction office to a locked basement beneath the western gallery. When the supervisor finally returned, he admitted that several named objects might still be awaiting examination. Eleanor stood beside Alistair. Postpone the ceremony. The Queen's representative is already traveling. Tell him why. And publicly announce that we may have built a national memorial above the grave of the man he intends to honor. That may already be the truth. Alistair looked towards the completed hall through his study window. The project had consumed years of planning and much of his political capital. He imagined the headlines, the ridicule, the loss of royal patronage, the accusation that Ravenshaw's great public gift had been built upon desecration. He issued a new order. The storage boxes were to remain sealed and removed from guest areas. They would be investigated after the ceremony. Nothing is being concealed, he told Eleanor. It is being postponed. A truth postponed until after applause is still being concealed. The dedication day arrived in brilliant autumn sunlight. Carriages filled the road to Ravenshaw. Officers in dress uniform entered beside widows carrying faded portraits. Merchants, veterans, nobles and journalists gathered beneath the gilded ceiling. The bronze soldier stood above them. Alistair wore ceremonial black and gold. Eleanor stood beside him in silver grey, her expression calm enough that most guests could not see her anger. Sir Edmund Fairmont took the stage. He praised the hall as a contribution to national remembrance. Then he invited Ruth Ward forward. She was 67, small and straight-backed, holding a worn military letter in both hands. Her Majesty has asked that today's first honor be given to Sergeant Elias Ward, Sir Edmund announced, whose final resting place has remained unknown for 3 decades. Alistair felt the room narrow around him. Ruth spoke briefly. My brother returned from war ill. We were told he died somewhere near Ravenshaw. My mother waited for word until her own death. Sir Edmund lifted a new commemorative medal. This hall was built so men such as Sergeant Ward would never be forgotten. A voice came from the rear. He was not forgotten. Everyone turned. Agnes Crowley stood beneath the entrance arch. Samuel Pike was beside her. Eleanor stepped away from Alistair and walked towards them. Alistair descended from the stage. You were forbidden from entering this building. Agnes met his gaze. I was forbidden from entering the ground where I buried him. Ruth looked between them. You knew my brother. I recorded his death. The room erupted into whispers. Agnes held up the copied burial map. He was placed in the Eastern Military Row. Samuel unfolded his marked architectural plan. And I found his coffin plate beneath the eastern side of this ballroom. Alistair's face hardened. Why was this not reported? It was, Samuel said. Your office told us the names could wait until after the hall was finished. Sir Edmund turned towards Alistair. Where are the objects recovered from the site? In storage, pending examination. Bring them here. This ceremony is not an appropriate setting for an unfinished archaeological inquiry. Ruth stepped towards the Duke. "Is my brother beneath this building?" Alistair could not answer. Sir Edmund's voice became colder. "Bring the boxes." 2 estate officers carried the first wooden crate into the ballroom. The seal bore Alistair's own administrative mark. Sir Edmund broke it. Inside lay coffin plates, military badges, rings, coins and fragments of metal bearing initials and names. The objects had been protected from theft. They had not been identified. Agnes knelt beside the crate. One by one, she compared them with her list. A hospital tag belonging to a minor, a wedding ring recorded beside the name of a servant, a brass plate from an infant's coffin. Then she found the silver medal. Soil still darkened its edge. The engraving read, "Elias Ward." Ruth took it with shaking hands. She turned it over. On the reverse were 3 small lines cut into the silver. "My father made these," she whispered, "so Elias would know it from the others." Samuel pointed towards the marked plan. He was found there. His finger rested upon the eastern ballroom floor. Only a few feet from where the royal delegation stood, Sir Edmund looked up at the bronze statue of the unknown soldier. Then he faced Alistair. "You invited the Crown to honor a missing soldier, while his grave remained beneath this floor." Alistair forced himself to speak. The remains were transferred respectfully. Agnes rose. "Which remains were his?" No one answered. "Where is Elias Ward now?" The construction supervisor looked towards the floor. Unidentified remains were reinterred together. Ruth closed her hand around the medal. "You found his name." Her voice trembled, but it did not break. "You did not lose it." She looked directly at Alistair. "You decided your ballroom could not wait." The sentence moved through the hall more powerfully than any accusation shouted in anger. Sir Edmund lowered the ceremonial medal. "By authority of the Royal Military Memorial Commission, this dedication is suspended." Alistair stared at him. "Sir Edmund, no royal patronage will attach to this hall until every disturbed burial has been investigated." The orchestra remained silent. The great doors were opened. Guests began to leave beneath the Ravenshaw crest. Veterans passed the statue without saluting. Journalists filled their notebooks. Ruth Ward placed her brother's recovered medal upon the marble floor. Alistair stood at the center of the magnificent hall he had built to prove that his family respected the dead. Above him rose the anonymous bronze soldier. Beneath him lay graves he had called empty land, and all around him the names he had refused to hear were beginning to return. The doors of Ravenshaw Memorial Hall remained closed after the royal delegation departed. By evening, servants had removed the flowers from the entrance. The musicians left without payment disputes. The ceremonial banners were folded and carried into storage. Only the bronze soldier remained untouched. Alistair stood beneath it while workmen covered the marble floor with canvas. The hall was silent enough for him to hear each hammer being placed upon the inspection table. Eleanor entered through the side door. "The Royal Commission has ordered the site sealed," she said. "No stone is to be moved without an independent surveyor present." Alistair did not turn. "I know. Sir Edmund has requested every instruction issued from your office." "I know. And Agnes's burial books are to be released immediately." He finally looked at her. "I did not order anyone to destroy them." "No. You merely removed them from the woman who understood them. I intended to examine everything after the dedication." Eleanor glanced around the gilded hall. After the applause, his face tightened. The project employed hundreds of men. The town expected this building. The Crown had committed to the ceremony. And none of those facts required you to call the land empty. I believed the records were unreliable. You believed the person presenting them was unimportant. Alistair turned away. The distinction was becoming impossible to avoid. The investigation began the following morning. Sir Edmund appointed military archivists, parish officials, physicians, and independent surveyors. Agnes was invited to sit with them. She arrived, carrying her copied map and wearing the same plain black dress she had worn to the dedication. Alistair offered her a chair at the main table. She did not thank him. The original burial books were brought from the Ravenshaw archive. Dust covered their covers. One ledger had been placed beneath estate tax records because no clerk had considered it urgent. Agnes opened it carefully. This is the fever register. Sir Edmund examined the first page. Who wrote these entries? Some were written by the parish clerk, some by the infirmary matron. The later ones are mine. And the locations? Measured from the eastern wall, the ash trees, and the old chapel foundation. The senior surveyor compared her markings with the construction plans. Several reference points still existed beneath the new gardens. The map was not professionally drawn. It was also remarkably accurate. By the end of the first day, the investigators confirmed 17 names. By the third, they confirmed 42. Military lists matched Agnes's regimental notes. Parish accounts matched coffin purchases. Hospital records matched dates of death. Letters from families confirmed personal effects. The memories of an old woman became an ordered body of evidence. Alistair attended every session. No one asked him to speak. The final report identified 287 disturbed burials. 63 people could be named with reasonable certainty. 31 had served in the military. Others included miners, domestic servants, nurses, laborers, and workhouse residents. Several grave rows had been cut through by foundation trenches. The eastern ballroom stood directly above the former military section. The communal reburial trench contained remains that could no longer be separated reliably. That fact silenced the room when it was read aloud. Money could rebuild walls. No amount of money could restore identities once bones and objects had been mixed without records. Sir Edmund turned towards Alistair. Who authorized the instruction permitting unidentified remains to be moved collectively? I did. Were you warned that the site contained named burials? Yes. Were you shown documentary evidence? I was shown records I considered insufficient. Did you commission an independent review? No. Why? Alistair looked towards the report. Because I believed delay would destroy the project. Sir Edmund's voice remained controlled. So you accepted the risk of destroying the evidence instead? Alistair had no answer. The newspapers treated the scandal without mercy. One headline called the building the Ballroom of the Buried. Another printed Agnes's words from the council meeting. The dead merely built the world you inherited. Editorials asked why the graves of poor men required greater proof than the claims of a duke. The Royal Military Memorial Commission withdrew its patronage. Alistair resigned his position on the Regional Heritage Board before he could be removed. Invitations to London diminished. Donors withdrew from future Ravenshaw projects. Some called for the entire hall to be demolished. Others argued that destroying it would waste public money and erase evidence of the wrong. Eleanor proposed a more difficult solution. The eastern ballroom should be dismantled. The military burial area should be reopened under supervision. The surviving western section should be converted into a public archive and veterans center. The gardens should become a cemetery again. Alistair read the proposal twice. You intend to remove nearly half the building. Yes. The roof was designed as one structure. Then it must be redesigned. The expense will be enormous. So was the mistake. He looked at her. And how do you propose to fund it? You own a hunting estate in Yorkshire. Alistair understood. Ravenshaw Lodge had belonged to his family for generations. It was where dukes entertained ministers, officers, and foreign guests. My father left that property intact. Your father also left St. Jude's Field unprotected. He closed the proposal. You have already decided. No, the commission has decided the burials must be restored. You must decide whether you will pay for the harm without asking the town to finance your mistake. Ravenshaw Lodge was sold in the spring. The racing horses followed. A collection of ceremonial weapons went to private buyers. The money established an independent restoration fund. Alistair surrendered control of it. Eleanor's historical society was also separated from the ducal estate. Its board included parish representatives, veterans, local tradesmen, and descendants of those buried at St. Jude's. Agnes was offered compensation for the loss of her room, her employment, and the removal of her records. She accepted payment for the property taken from her. She refused a pension dependent upon Alistair's discretion. I will not have my security attached to your approval again. The trust arranged an independent annuity. Her burial books became protected public records. The dismantling began beneath public observation. Stone by stone, the eastern facade was removed. The ballroom floor where Ruth Ward had placed her brother's medal was lifted. Surveyors recorded every layer. Families gathered behind the barriers. Some came carrying names. Others brought nothing but stories. A woman from Newcastle identified her grandmother's brother through a hospital tag. A miner recognized an engraved tool belonging to an ancestor. Several objects could not be matched to anyone. Agnes insisted they remain displayed beside the records, not hidden in boxes. They belonged to lives, she said. Uncertainty is not permission to discard them. Samuel Pike supervised the stonework. Alistair offered him promotion. Samuel refused at first. I reported the medal, Your Grace. You did. And your office continued. It did. You wish to promote me now because I was right? No. Samuel waited. Because the new work requires someone willing to stop it when something is wrong. Samuel accepted only after the Restoration Board, not Alistair, approved the appointment. Alistair's public apology took place at St. Jude's Field. There was no stage, no orchestra, no Ravenshaw banner. The eastern section of the hall had already been reduced to open ground marked by survey lines. Agnes stood beside Ruth Ward. Eleanor remained among the families. Alistair faced them with the original construction order in his hand. I called this land empty because the people beneath it possessed neither marble nor influence. He unfolded the page. I instructed my officers to preserve anything bearing a recognized name and to move everything else without delay. His voice remained steady, though his hand did not. No contractor exceeded my authority. No official deceived me. The laborers followed the rule I gave them. He looked towards Agnes. I treated education as truth, title as ownership, and urgency as permission. No one interrupted. Many names were known. I did not consider the people who knew them important enough to delay me. Ruth held Elias's recovered medal against her coat. Alistair continued. I cannot restore the identities destroyed when the remains were mixed. I cannot repay families with a building, a speech, or another monument bearing my name." He lowered the order. "I can only surrender the ground, fund the work, and accept that remembrance does not require Ravenshaw to stand above it." There was no applause. This time, he understood why silence did not mean disrespect. Alistair proposed erecting a statue of Agnes at the entrance to the restored cemetery. She rejected the design before the sculptor finished his first drawing. "You still believe honor means making one person larger than everyone else. It would recognize what you preserved. Then preserve it." She placed the burial list before him. "Write their names. What of those we cannot identify? Give them space without pretending they never existed. What inscription would you choose?" Agnes considered the question. "Known to have lived, known to have mattered." No ducal crest appeared above the words. Alistair did not object. The scandal damaged his marriage more deeply than the loss of royal favor. Eleanor did not leave Ravenshaw, but she moved her office from the palace into the new independent archive. She stopped allowing Alistair to introduce her work as part of his program. One evening, he found her cataloguing recovered hospital records. "I never intended to dishonor the dead," he said. Eleanor did not look up. "You intended not to be delayed by them. I believed the hall would serve thousands. You continue to speak of scale as though a large benefit cancels a specific wrong. What do you want me to say? That the wrong was not an unfortunate cost. It was a choice." Alistair sat opposite her. "I chose the deadline. Yes, I chose not to investigate. Yes, I chose to believe Agnes's position made her evidence less reliable." Eleanor closed the ledger. "Yes." He looked towards the shelves. "And I chose a memorial bearing my name over the people it claimed to honor." For the first time, she met his eyes. "That is the truth you must remember when the next great project begins." 3 years later, St. Jude's Field reopened as the Garden of Names. The remaining western portion of Memorial Hall no longer carried the Ravenshaw name. Its galleries became a military records archive, a veterans assistance office, a parish history library, a public meeting hall, a room containing Agnes's burial maps and ledgers. The dismantled eastern side became a memorial garden. Low stone walls carried names in alphabetical order. No distinction was made between soldier, servant, miner, or workhouse resident. Where families had provided information, brief details were added. Where identity remained unknown, simple stones marked the recovered burial areas. At the center stood no statue, only the inscription Agnes had chosen. "Known to have lived. Known to have mattered." The first annual remembrance ceremony took place beneath clear autumn light. Ruth Ward placed Elias's medal beneath his name. Agnes read from the burial register. Samuel stood with the restoration workers. Eleanor joined the families near the wall. Alistair remained in the crowd. He had not been invited to speak. He had not asked. After the final name was read, people moved slowly through the garden. Some touched the stones. Others added flowers or folded letters. Alistair waited until the crowd had thinned. Then he walked beside Eleanor. "I thought remembrance required something magnificent," he said. "It required attention." He looked towards the surviving portion of the hall. "I wanted history to remember what I built." Eleanor turned towards the wall of names. "History will remember what you are willing to destroy to build it." He accepted the sentence without defense. For years, Alistair had measured service through visible achievements. Roads, schools, buildings, royal approval. He had believed Moral purpose could be proven by scale. St. Jude's taught him that arrogance could also arrive dressed as public benefit. It could employ workers. It could carry noble language. It could build a statue to forgotten soldiers while refusing to listen to the woman who knew where those soldiers lay. Ravenshaw was not redeemed because Alistair replaced one grand monument with another. It began to recover when he surrendered his claim to stand at the center of remembrance. He returned the ground. He restored the records. He accepted oversight. He paid without demanding gratitude. Most importantly, he allowed the names of poor people to appear without placing his own above them. Agnes finished speaking with a family near the western wall. As she passed Alistair, she paused. "The garden is not finished." He looked around. "More names? There will always be more information. Then the records will remain open." Agnes studied him, measuring whether the answer came from conviction or performance. Finally, she nodded. It was not forgiveness. It was permission to continue the work. Alistair watched her walk towards the archive. Beneath the autumn sun, the Garden of Names held no monument to the Duke who had nearly erased it. That absence became the most honest memorial Ravenshaw had ever built. A poor person did not lose the right to be remembered because death found them without wealth, marble, or influence. And a duke did not honor them by speaking the loudest. He honored them only when he became quiet enough to hear their names.